My name is Josh Mumm. I work for Common Cause New York, and Common Cause is an organization, it's a nonpartisan organization that advocates for an open and transparent government, and we try to strengthen our civic institutions to allow them to be more participatory and more effective to strengthen our democracy. And we're engaged in this campaign because media is very important in our society and in our democracy. And so we joined with Consumers Union to launch the Waiting for FiOS Coalition and host this event tonight. And this event is co-sponsored by a number of elected officials, so I just wanted to thank them and state those names first. It's been co-sponsored by Bronx Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr., State Senator Gustavo Rivera, Senator Jose Serrano, Assemblymember Michael Blake, Assemblymember Luis Sepulveda, Councilmember Annabelle Palma, Councilmember James Vaca, Councilmember Richie Torres, and Councilmember Fernanda Cabrera. So as you can see, that's quite a large number of elected officials who have signed on to this forum tonight because this is an issue that they've heard a lot about from their constituents. And so we have also heard a lot about this from our members, and that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight, is we want to have a conversation about the FiOS build-out. We had a forum in Manhattan that was also very successful. A number of our members and members of the public came forward to talk about their experiences in trying to get FiOS. Some of them were very happy with their experience with FiOS, and they talked about how great the product is and how they want it to be available and accessible to everybody. However, the majority of folks in that room who came forward have had a long story to tell about their trials trying to get FiOS, about calling the company multiple times, about having operators tell them that it was just not coming to their entire neighborhood sometimes. Sometimes they would hear that it just wasn't coming to their block, or just their house wasn't going to be getting FiOS for different reasons, and they talked to their neighbors about this. Some of their neighbors were able to get it, but they weren't. Some of their neighbors also weren't able to get it, and so they were very concerned because they want to get FiOS. And we're here today because of a franchise agreement, a very important franchise agreement that was signed in 2008. And we're going to get into that a little bit more. So for now, I think I wanted to talk a little bit about that for folks who aren't maybe as familiar with the franchise agreement. I know many of you probably are, or feel very, very familiar with the agreement and the different parts of it. But I will talk a little bit about the agreement that was signed from our perspective, of the facts of the agreement, and then we'll have other folks come up and testify. We'll allow Verizon just to speak. We want you guys to tell your story as well, because we just want this to be a conversation about the issue. We want an objective conversation about what's actually happening, and then if any other members of the public want to also talk, that's what this forum is all about. So with that in mind, I'm just going to go ahead and get into this just a little bit. And I should say that it's not lightly that we do this. When Common Cause takes on an issue, it's because we have strong member support on that issue, and it's an issue that our members are talking to us saying you need to do something about this, that we're getting emails. So we have come to it from that point of view. So let's just dig in a little bit. We're going to go under the microscope a little bit to the franchise agreement of what does Verizon owe the city of New York through signing the franchise agreement. The basic nuts and bolts was that in 2008, Verizon entered into a non-exclusive franchise agreement with the city. It was given public rights of way to expand the fiber network by June 30th. It was supposed to have passed all households, and the key point was that Verizon promised to make cable service units available to all residential dwelling units and not to discriminate between or among individuals, and to make the product available to any individual or family who wanted it. And this was a point that was reiterated multiple times after the agreement was signed, and in the statements made by the company after. Talked about a new day in New York where any individual would be able to have access to FiOS. And what was the timing? So Verizon would be able to install after passing within 7 days, and then for something called a non-standard installation, which is maybe it's a little more complicated than your other installation, there would be 6 months after the initial request to make that happen. So what did Verizon get from this? Obviously, it wasn't just Verizon being willing to do this agreement for nothing. There was a substantial benefit that came from this agreement. So Verizon would create 4 public access channels for each borough and 5 government educational access channels. Verizon also agreed to give $10 million in 12 installments for the production of local governmental educational access programming, a very good service for the city, and also a $4 million grant to the city as well to provide FiOS into NYCHA buildings. However, there were several exceptions written into the franchise agreement, notably with the inability to access a building, which I understand is a very sort of key contention of what's happening, but this was also within the contract. Verizon did have to make repeated attempts to access the building and also inform the landlord of his or her responsibilities under the franchise agreement. Moreover, with unsuccessful attempts, after repeated unsuccessful attempts, Verizon must petition the State of New York Public Service Commission for access. There was also a local employment clause within the contract about developing a plan and implementing a training and all great and wonderful things of a contract that we would like to see. Accountability. What were the accountability mechanisms? Within there was supposed to be strong record-keeping processes. Verizon was supposed to make publicly available records and then also keep records of complaints, service calls for 6 years, all installations, number of buildings, homes passed, upgraded wire centers. So a lot of record keeping was built into the contract as well. I'm not going to read all of that. What happens in default, or how do we classify default of the contract? Any breach, default, or failure, or other non-compliance, the city can either seek money damages from Verizon, make a withdrawal from the security fund, and or just terminate the agreement at any time if it was found that Verizon did not maintain the security fund, or this one repeatedly abandons obligations under the agreement. So that is one of the things that's being contested. Some enforcement built in there. It's automatically set to expire on June 30th, 2020, although the city can extend the agreement if it chooses to at any moment. Moreover, Verizon can terminate, or the city can terminate the agreement, as we said before, if the company breaks the contract, commits specific malpractice, repeated false entries in account books, abandonment of obligations, and all of that. So what does Verizon get from doing all those great things? Well, it gets the ability to be in New York City, for one, into the largest marketplace in the country. It gets rights of way, unquestioned access to the public rights of way. So essentially, this is use of public space. It's sort of a public space or public goods issue here as well, in order to build out. The rights of way include the space on or above or below streets, through all those areas as well, parks. These rights are not exclusive to Verizon, but the agreement gives Verizon clear access to the market for television and internet services in the city. There's also some revenue. Verizon is supposed to keep annual revenue from providing its services to the city, except for a small franchise fee of 5% of annual revenue. The rest of the revenue goes to Verizon. So the mayor's audit in earlier this year really brought to light a lot of issues that were happening with Verizon's performance under the franchise agreements. But in early 2014, the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications noted increasing complaints from consumers about being able to access FiOS. So again, the build-out was supposed to be completed by mid-2014. And there was an extension up until November because of the Hurricane Sandy. But this was sort of at the time where we're looking to see that the job is pretty much done at this point, but hearing a lot of complaints. And most of these complaints dealt with Verizon claiming to have equipped households with its service, while in reality those buildings and houses had not been passed. DEWIT initiated its audit, and Verizon was reluctant to provide crucial information. The city warned, therefore, that the audit was not as comprehensive as it could have been if it had Verizon's full cooperation. The audit was completed in the spring of 2015 of this year. So some of the findings there that come from the city's audit, not from us, was that Verizon's claim of completing fiber optic network was untrue. That Verizon had falsely asserted many times that any person living in the city who wanted FiOS can have it, because many people were not equipped with it who had wanted it, which violated a section of the agreement that required, also violated the section of agreement requiring it to track complaints from paying customers and from prospective customers. Verizon only tracked paying customers' complaints, so this gives you, it's hard to have a full picture of who had wanted FiOS when only current actual paying customers' information was tracked, and this is a very key point of the audit that was brought to light. Moreover, the franchise agreement's requirement of documenting all service requests from prospective customers, yeah, that's what I just said. There was also another piece which was sort of just more of a performance metric, which was Verizon had repeatedly failed to complete non-standard installations within that 6-month time frame, with data showing that 75% of non-standard installation requests were left unattended for over a year. So this is installation requests that were unattended for over a year. So these non-standard installation requests also were at an alarming rate of requests that were classified as non-standard. A high percentage were classified as non-standard, giving you the impression that maybe that was what a lot of installations actually were. Verizon has not communicated with prospective customers clearly, and has actually misled them through its claim of 100% availability through all New Yorkers, according to the mayor's office's audit. And at Common Cause, I should note that the members that we've talked to about this have had mailers come to them saying, "Would you like to subscribe to FiOS?" And they have gone online onto the website and tried to access FiOS and have not been able to get it. They've been told it's just not in your neighborhood yet. So they're being sold the idea that that FiOS was available to them when in fact it just wasn't, and there was no sort of deadline for that happening. So again, Verizon does not have a manual of procedures to detail the process of dealing with paying and prospective customers. In several instances, Verizon did not provide timely service to residential buildings unless the building administration agreed to a bulk agreement for FiOS service, which is an unethical business practice. So this is something we've heard from a lot of folks as well, a lot of our members, where they said, "Look, I can't get it in my building because we have this agreement with Time Warner, for instance, that we get a discounted rate, so not all of us in the building would sign up for it. However, myself and many other people in my building want to have it." And this also is not part of the contract. There is no such exclusivity agreement where every building, every apartment, or every dwelling within a large building is supposed to become subscribers, or is that, was that ever the intention? The intention was to give it to any dwelling any person who wanted it, any residential dwelling. So this is again, clear violation of the franchise agreement. And then Verizon has made it very difficult for DoIT personnel to access the company's databases and records throughout the auditing process, often refusing to provide information or sending it weeks or months after the request, which is again in direct violation of the agreement of which required full transparency and disclosure of these records. So with that in mind, we are having, that's sort of our understanding of the franchise agreement and the mayor's audit, which brings us to today and where we are now. Clearly, this is an issue. Otherwise, you wouldn't have 9 elected officials in the Bronx co-sponsoring a form, putting their names on this, and sending this out across the internet and to the news. It's an issue that many of our members talk about, as I said. It's an issue that folks in the communities have experienced. So we are here to have an open conversation about the franchise agreement and want to hear from you and about your take on this as well. So we've organized the Waiting for FiOS Coalition, which is a campaign that comes, like I said, from consumer groups, Consumers Union, and Common Cause, working with other internet advocates such as Free Press on this issue. We've been collecting stories from individuals, and we've been organizing a series of forums in each borough. We had our Manhattan Forum, co-sponsored by Borough President Gail Brewer. It was actually in July, and that was, again, as I said before, very, very powerful event. And we're having forums in Queens as well as Brooklyn coming up. If folks are interested in learning more about the campaign, hearing some of the research, reading the audit yourselves, reading the franchise agreement, you can find that information on waitingforfios.nyc. That's the website that we've created. We hope that you'll do that and really look into this yourselves to learn more about this franchise agreement and what it means for New York. And I will close by just saying that this is very important. We feel that anytime the city signs a franchise agreement with anybody for anything, any service, we want to make sure those commitments are maintained. And in a city like this where cable and internet is so important to the residents and there aren't many choices, this becomes a very serious issue. Yeah, with that, I guess I'll just open it up. Yeah. So Verizon, I guess you guys, do you have a representative who wants to speak? Sure. Come up. Thanks, Pat. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Lespinasse, and I'm with Verizon. Thank you, Borough President Diaz Jr. and others for organizing this event and giving us the opportunity to hear your concerns. You should know that Verizon is a strong New York City-based company. We have operated in the city for more than 100 years. Our headquarters is located here. We have about 12,000 employees who live in New York City. Many retirees and their families are here too. Our commitment to the city is unwavering, and our landline and wireless networks are intertwined with the operations of the city every minute of every day. Our installation of fiber around the city and the associated rollout of FiOS services, including deployment of video services pursuant to the cable television franchise agreement, is unprecedented. In fact, it's the single largest communications project of its kind in any city in United States history. No other cable company in the city, or any other technology company for that matter, has undertaken this impressive initiative across all 5 boroughs. There are hundreds of thousands of customers across the city using these services today. To date, we have spent $3.5 billion on this project, and this number is growing. This installation of a fiber network throughout all 5 boroughs has not only brought a new, valuable, and competitive set of communication services to New Yorkers, but it also is providing the city a resilient, dependable, and reliable network. It is a network that helps to keep New York City as the premier city in the country and the world. We are proud of this investment, of what we've done for the city, and we are most proud of our valuable employees who have helped us build this futuristic network. By undertaking this years-long massive upgrade of our network, we have kept good, high-paying jobs in the city. Having said that, if it was an easy task, everybody would be doing it. We are keenly aware that our FiOS services have been in the news over the past couple of weeks. While we disagree with many of the characterizations contained in those reports, we are listening, and we're working every day to bring FiOS services to more people in New York City. We have covered all boroughs with fiber, but we realize there is more work to do to improve our processes. As we have said repeatedly, the challenge we face in New York City, unlike anywhere else, is getting cooperation from landlords and property owners to bring fiber into their buildings. It also means gaining permission from adjacent properties to pass our fiber facilities through their basements or backyards. It's a daunting task, but it's also one that is community-based. In many cases, neighbors and nearby buildings are key to bringing fiber into another building. And events like this help to raise the awareness in specific neighborhoods and encourage this cooperation. It's also a task that we tackle every day by knocking on doors, sending letters and emails, and making calls. In closing, we appreciate and thank you so much for wanting our service. We're here tonight to listen, and we know that many of you have your individual questions. So we've set up an email address, bronxfios@verizon.com, bronxfios@verizon.com, that tonight's attendees can use to send their name, address, and contact information. If you provide us with that information, we'll investigate the status about the arrival of fiber and FiOS at your address and provide you with a status update on where we are. We also have flyers available in the back of the room that contain this email address. Again, thank you Borough President Diaz Jr. and others for hosting this forum, and for all of you here this evening for attending.
Charles Bell from Consumers Union.
Thank you, Josh. So at Consumers Union, we've been quite interested in promoting more customer options for choice of cable and internet. And we were actually involved in 2008 with Common Cause and other public interest groups in New York City when the Verizon franchise agreement was adopted. And someone commented earlier that we opposed the franchise. Actually, we welcomed it. We wanted to see, we were concerned that many customers have effectively no choice for their cable or broadband provider, and that it would be a good thing to have more choices in the marketplace. Our concern, though, at the time was that we wanted to participate in the way that that agreement was developed. We thought the public had a right to see the agreements and participate actively in its development. And we were quite frustrated at the time that the Bloomberg administration did not facilitate the public's participation, and specifically did not post a copy of the agreements to the DO-IT website, the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications, or the Franchise Concession Review Committee board. Neither site made the agreement available to the public interest groups. And there was a public hearing in May 20th of that year that was attended by Verizon and many of its grantees, and who had got an advanced heads up to come and say the agreement was great. So it is a little bit of a contrast with the de Blasio administration that they have audited this agreement, and they're taking seriously New York City's responsibility to ensure that the agreements it signs are monitored and enforced. And so at the time in 2008, Verizon made very explicit promises to the public to bring cable and internet competition to all customers in New York City. And I have in my files this copy of a very nice press release which was issued. And I want to give Verizon a lot of credit for, and its workers, a lot of credit for the work that they have done. They have brought broadband and cable choice to many customers, millions of customers in New York State and New York City that did not have those choices before, and they deserve credit for having done that. But at the time, there was also this very explicit understanding that we're bringing cable, internet, television choice to every household in New York City, regardless of the demographic character of that neighborhood, regardless if it's upper income people or low and moderate income people. And it seems that I think both sides can probably agree it's a big project. There's more work that needs to be done. We know from the numbers provided by New York City that right now some 22% of New York City households have no internet connection, and that number jumps to 36% for families living in poverty. So probably competition between two cable and broadband companies or three cable and broadband companies is not going to be enough to lower prices and make the service affordable for all the customers in the service area. There are some provisions for lifeline rates and discounts. I think the customers that we hear from at Consumers Union are concerned that the value proposition for triple play and double play is really out of whack with what many families can afford to pay for service. So what I hear from customers, and we've gone out and asked for stories about cable and broadband problems from our members in New York State, and they tell us they're quite concerned about the high cost of the service, just flat out. There's quite a number of people that also tell us that they still don't have an effective choice, that they don't have two broadband internet providers going head-to-head with a high-speed connection such that they would have an effective choice, or that it's significantly helping to moderate or drive down the price increases. Instead, we get a lot of complaints that, from customers who are still captive of one company primarily. They sign up for a triple play deal, but they notice that usually after the first year, the price continues to creep up for telephone, internet, and cable service. There's many, I would say a dominant theme in the complaints we get is, I have to pay for all these channels that I don't want. I don't watch sports, or I don't want religious programming. I don't want all these schlocky movies. And isn't there some way that we could have a bigger choice of affordable options for cable and broadband service? Someone said, in fact, one of the customers from the Bronx said, TV is very pricey to watch television. Bring back the rabbit ear antenna, which I guess that customer would be free to do if that's what they would like to do. But we went out to our membership base. We got about 500 stories from around the state about telecom, cable, and broadband problems. In the Bronx, I have about 10 stories. I have one very clear story from a customer who says, essentially, I feel like I'm in prison with Optimum. So I have some customers who are saying, I'm still locked into one channel, one provider, and there's no effective competition at my door. Another case, I've got a customer who said that they have DirecTV, and they said, my bill is now ridiculously high for the channels that I never really use. And in terms of internet, I have a DSL internet connection with Verizon, which really sucks. It's super slow. We lose connections quite often, and my bill is ridiculous for this service. I have another one where a customer was quite concerned about the double play service they have with Verizon. They thought it was higher than triple play with a competitor. And then they said, I've had this rate for close to 2 years. It's only when I call Verizon and complain bitterly that they tell me that something somewhat cheaper might be available to me. How did this work? Why couldn't they more proactively tell me that there's a better deal for me and that I could have saved some money by choosing it? And he said, and so I requested my issue be escalated up the chain of command, and I was told that someone would call me. That never happened, and after a couple of months, I finally gave up and paid my current bill and back bills for fearing having my service interrupted. Another customer said, who did get FiOS, said, I recently changed to FiOS because Comcast was too expensive. I'm still paying nearly $200 a month. I wish that prices could be lowered. So in other boroughs in Queens and Brooklyn, we have relatively more stories about people who tried to sign up for FiOS and were not contacted and are still waiting. And we believe this is also the case in the Bronx. We've heard from some groups at Co-op City, and it was also reported in the New York Times. There's a number of customers in the Bronx that are having quite significant difficulties getting their buildings hooked up or having an effective choice at their doorstep. And so we recognize that this is not always on Verizon. Sometimes it's the landlords of these buildings are not giving their customers a choice. But we want to be here in the public town square, speak out about that, and to work with the community to really get these issues resolved. And in a democracy, the internet and broadband, a fast broadband connection, become more and more important, particularly for lower income citizens and residents who are trying to get access to social services or sign up for health care or send in their homework to their community college. And so we believe that we have an obligation as citizens to work together to make sure every citizen in the community can be hooked up and have an affordable connection. So we're very pleased to partner with Common Cause, and we will stay out here. We'd love to hear people's stories and actually complaints, complaints that people have. We think that this audit that has been done by the de Blasio administration offers an opportunity to move New York City forward to more complete and more affordable broadband internet connection. and hopefully down the road more choices so that consumers are not, you know, I don't like to read these reports that we get from people that I don't want to pay $200 a month or $250 a month for telecommunication services. I can't afford to do that. In New York City and New York State, there are many workers and working families that can't afford these high rates. So I think if we can send one message, it's like we want more affordable options. We understand that the costs of these technologies are very high, that you have competitors that are trying to undercut you. I think as a consumer advocate, I'm a little disappointed that competition didn't bring and deliver more benefits in terms of affordable telecom services that people can have access to. But we're not going to quit trying. There's other communities around the United States where the city governments are getting much more directly involved in trying to shape internet and broadband policy so that consumers can have more choices. And we think that's a good idea for the United States. This is a good idea for New York State. This is an issue that's just too important to leave solely to the private markets. Public sector needs to be involved in formulating good policies and making sure that everyone has a right to essential telecommunications services. So that's why we're here, and we're very pleased to work with Common Cause and look forward to hearing your comments and suggestions and working together to get these problems solved.
Much, Chuck. Susan?
I'm Susan Lerner from Common Cause, and I want to thank everybody for being here. And I just wanted to wrap up by saying that we too sent out a survey to our members. We received over 300 responses. It was here locally in New York City, split between people who had FiOS and people who didn't. And we heard from Bronx residents that they felt that the build-out was uneven. Residents who said, my street doesn't have it, but other streets in my neighborhood do, and we're not sure why. We've heard from buildings where they told us they've been trying to get FiOS and haven't been able to get FiOS. So we're very glad to have the email from Verizon, and we're going to do our best to publicize it to the people who got in touch with us from the Bronx, and hopefully through the co-sponsors, we'd ask that the co-sponsoring elected officials let people know this forum took place and that Verizon wants to hear from individuals who want FiOS. And I think it's a tribute to the product and also consumers' desire to have a choice. We actually, when we started the survey, were kind of taken aback with some of the passion that we heard from people who really felt that they had to have this service and only this service, or that this service wasn't provided to them. It made them angry. And I think that goes to the need to have real competition. So when we also received responses from buildings, and some of them were in the Bronx, where they said that they were told by FiOS representatives that they could only be wired if the entire building would sign up for FiOS, we felt that that undercuts the idea behind the franchise agreement. We're in favor of competition. So we're going to do our best to get the word out, and hopefully you will be hearing from Bronx residents who have specific problems. And without others who want to be heard, we're going to close out the evening and say thank you very much to the co-sponsors and to Hostos Community College for letting us use this terrific space. And pass the word to people in Queens. And we're going to be doing this again because you're right, we do want to help you guys at Verizon build out according to this agreement, because we believe that everybody needs access to a choice of internet providers and to have affordable and 21st century telecommunications. So thank you all.